It was said in Oregon's Willamette Valley, if you threw seeds on the ground, they would grow. And they did, and they did. I, too, was part of an Oregon migration in 1985 at an iris fancier and growers convention in Southern California. I was impressed by the words of a young farmer. He was speaking about the qualities of living and farming in Oregon. Later, I had the privilege of a conversation with this gentleman. I told him of my dreams of farming and someday growing nursery stock. He told me I should come to Oregon. That person is someone many of you know. That was Ray Schreiner of Schreiner's Iris Farms. I never dreamed in just a few short years later I would pack it up, leave my good job, my friends, my family, and I would be moving to Salem, Oregon. I'm still not a nursery stock grower. My friends would disagree based on all the irises, roses, tulips, daffodils, hostas, and hundreds of other perennials that I grow in my yard, but I did make the right decision coming to Oregon. I've also learned a few things along the way about business and business people, farming and farmers. That is, we all need each other, support each other. We can all live in this beautiful and bountiful valley and live in harmony. If it wasn't for the risk the settlers took in the mid-19th century, we would not be here today to celebrate agriculture in Oregon and all it brings to our community, our state, our country, and the world. Good afternoon. I'm Laura Dorn. I'm a real estate broker with Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate, and I serve as the Chamber Board President. I welcome you all to our Harvest Festival celebration, but most of all, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our MC, Bruce Anderson. He is no stranger to our chamber and community. A few things about Bruce. He was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. He is a graduate of Oregon State. Go Beavs. And his wife and Lois have lived in Oregon, or in Kaiser, since they got married in 1990. He's raised 4 kids. The sons went to McNary, and the daughters went to South. Now that must have been interesting conversations over that rivalry. He's been a longtime lobbyist and a key political staffer. Notably, he served in the Salem area for 12 years with Northwest Naturals Community Fair Manager. He's a past president of the Salem Chamber and the Downtown Rotary. He has served on local boards to include, of course, the Salem Chamber, the Rotary, Boys and Girls Club, SEDCOR, and Salem Kaiser Education Foundation. At one time, Bruce belonged to 6 chambers, so Bruce is certainly a big fan and supporter of our chamber. Currently, he serves on Oregon State Capital Foundation Boards of Directors. He is a former Kaiser City Councilor. Was, or maybe once you're Eagle Scout, you're always an Eagle Scout. He loves college football. He is definitely a political junkie for those that know Bruce. He loves living and working in Salem. Please help me in welcoming our MC for the day and our wonderful event, Bruce Anderson.
Oh, and I got a pair of glasses too. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate that so much. Well, welcome to you all. It is an absolute honor to join you all here today. And this is our 170th year of the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. So it's really my pleasure to be with you here as we celebrate in our awesome agriculture community and industry. So I really appreciate being able to join you here today. So the Salem Chamber, SAIF, and Key Bank have a rich and lengthy partnership celebrating our local ag producers, processors, vintners, and growers. But the people in ag are what makes this industry so remarkable in Oregon. Now, if Laura told you a little bit about me, I love history, and so I've got to throw in a little story. As I was looking back on a few things about, as we're closing in on the 80th anniversary of World War II, back in the summer of 1941, there was lots happening in ag and workforce issues, kind of sounds familiar to where we're at today. But back then, as you may remember or may know, green beans were prevalent in this area, as is so much of our other products. But back then, we had a huge green bean harvest that was happening, but massive shortages in our pickers. Well, as we often do here in the Salem area, we come together in an incredible way, and boy, did they ever. Papers at the time noted that virtually all local merchants would close at that time to help with the Marion County bean harvest. And for our bankers in the audience, Ernesto, and I think I saw Ryan Albritton around here too, they even voted to lend as many of their staff as possible to help out with the harvest. And our schools, if Christy Perry, I don't think Christy's here, but it was kind of interesting to note even the schools closed down to help out. Absolutely incredible. And I'd even go so far as to note something the Oregon Journal opined about, and that was, in the name of food for national defense, to be a picker is to be a patriot. So in the end, more than 7,000 local community members came together and helped out with that harvest. And for me, that was incredibly inspiring to read and a great lesson for us today. So I would say as we gather together today to celebrate our region and this key industry, it's something we can kind of look back and be really proud of, in my opinion. So during lunch today, you saw many slides noting the impact of ag here in Oregon. You also viewed the many generous companies who make this event possible. And at this time, if you could please join me in thanking all of our sponsors for their generous support. And as Laura noted, of course, I'm a political person. We also want to make sure and recognize all of our elected officials at this time. So if you would please stand. I know a few that are here: Wendy Valise, Cullum Willis, Daniel Bethel, Kevin Cameron, and Maria Hinojosa Pressy. If you would please stand, and if I missed anyone, please stand and let us recognize our awesome elected officials. And we've also want to take time to also recognize our past presidents for the chamber that are in the audience as well. If you please stand and be recognized at this time too. Really good to see TJ Sullivan here too, so thanks for being here, buddy. And finally, our final recognition I do want to extend is to our incredible chamber board of directors that are in attendance today. Please stand and let us thank you and recognize you today. All righty, thank you so much. And at this time, if I could have Dr. Sheldon Nord come up, and we're going to get our program underway with our invocation.
Thank you, Bruce. Good to see you, TJ. You're an answer to prayer. I want to thank the SAIF Corporation, and I also want to thank Ernesto at Key Bank for your generosity to this community. I want to thank the Salem Chamber and the leadership of Bruce and Tom and Laura at the Chamber, and also thank the Salem Convention Center. They're happy to have events here again. Corbin University will start a new agriculture science program in August of 2022. Will be the only ag science program west of the Rocky Mountains taught from a biblical worldview. So you're going to see more about that in the coming months. Please join me as we pray. Father, you are the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. You are the God of creation, and we know that everything is created by and for you. The weather and growing conditions are from you. We thank you for the heat and pray for the families who have experienced low yields. We pray for rain, Father, and for a healthy snowpack to offset the current drought. We pray for FFA, and we commit Josiah as he speaks today, and for FFA members and families as they get back to a normal year of activities and travel. We also pray for Barb as she speaks with us today. We pray that this new academic program at Corbin will prepare young professionals to be difference makers in the ag community and meet the needs of this valley. Today we celebrate the ag community. Bless the farmers, Father, and the ranchers in this valley as they feed the nation and the world. Father, we cultivate and we plant, we fertilize and we nurture, but it is you who provides the harvest. We thank you for the harvest this year. We know that every good and perfect gift comes from you. We commit this time and this agenda to you. We thank you for the food, and may our fellowship be sweet. We pray in the matchless name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you so much, Sheldon. Really appreciate that. And thanks also for your generous support here as well. At this time, if you would please rise for the singing of our national anthem, and I'd like to invite Stacy Foster from the Oregon Dairy Nutrition Council to the stage, please.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stacy. That was awesome. At this time, it is time for Madam President Laura Dorn. Please come on back and help us present our Spirit of Salem Award, please.
Thank you, Bruce. That helps. Today's Spirit of Salem Award recipient has likely greeted you with an incredible smile already today. It's a she, has been called the most positive and uplifting individual in Oregon agriculture. We are incredibly fortunate for her to apply her craft in Salem. She's an advocate, a lobbyist, an organizer, and a cheerleader. Tammy Dennee, a lifelong Oregonian, born in Hood River before residing in Pendleton for 20 years. You can't take the hee-haw out of this woman. Tammy and her husband, Michael, are now proud Willamette Valley residents living in Dallas for the past 6 years. Following a successful career with the Oregon Dairy Farmers Association, representing nearly 200 Grade A licensed family farms, Tammy now applies her talents as the executive director of the Oregon Cattlemen's Association. The mission of the Oregon Cattlemen's Association is to promote environmentally and socially sound cattle industry practices alongside a positive and contemporary image of the industry. Tammy seeks to improve the strength the industry's economics, assuring a strong political presence in related areas, and ultimately protect industry communities and private property rights. Dennee has spent her professional career advocating for the essential work of key agricultural sectors. In addition to her professional experience, Dennee is a dedicated community servant. Through her commitments to County Fair Board engagement and Downtown Rotary Club of Salem, Tammy is a longtime member of the Oregon Agriculture in Classroom Foundation Board of Directors and has served on numerous boards of directors, including the Pendleton Roundup, and has served as president of the Pendleton Chamber. Tammy and her husband return every year to volunteer to the Pendleton Roundup and Happy Canyon. Salem Chamber CEO Tom Hoffert stated, "Watching Tammy partner with Lynn Zielinski Mills and our entire Ag Committee is like watching a conductor-guided orchestra, patient and thoughtful, while ensuring each component brings an incredible value to the whole. Tammy inspires people to be kind, and this world needs more kindness and grace." Salem Downtown Rotary is the safest place to catch Tammy in action. She's more than a volunteer, she's more than a cheerleader. Fellow Rotarian Barry Nelson with Capital Financial Planners states, "While Tammy is one of the most organized people I know, she has the ability to light up the room with her laugh, her self-deprecating sense of humor. She serves admirably as Rotary Club of Salem's centennial year president, adapting quickly to the onset of COVID-19, still enabling Rotarians to remain connected and continue to make a difference. She's an incredible person. I'm honored to know her," states Nelson. Please remember to say "eat beef" when you're greeting Tammy, and join me in congratulating our Spirit of Salem Award recipient, Mrs. Tammy Dennee. Congratulations.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Take a picture. All right, you're on.
Oh my gosh.
This is for you.
Okay, well, hello. I couldn't be more surprised. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Laura. Thank you to all of you in this room and everything that you do for our community. I'm usually much more comfortable, well, not usually, I am much more comfortable in the background and as an orchestra leader helping to cause events or lobbying activities to take place. So standing in front of you and speaking, Tom handed me a little note and said, "Okay, you have 3 or 4 minutes." I thought, well, it won't take that long. So thank you sincerely. I am honored, I am humbled, and it is a privilege to be part of this community and to represent agriculture and our ranching community, previously our dairy community, and prior to that, the wheat industry. So I'm humbled and honored as always. Thank you so much for everything you do and for all of your leadership in this community. And from the land that I'm from, we always say, "Let her buck." So have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and thank you for being here today. As part of the planning committee, I just want you to know how much we value your attendance, and I know Lynn is sending her blessings and her love, so God bless.
All right. Thank you so much, Tammy. And we want to kind of keep this, the great news coming and rolling along here today. So each year we're able to help the educational goals of one very deserving member of Oregon FFA. To accomplish this important task, we partner with our friends at Portland General Electric to invest in our rising agricultural talent. So we want to direct your attention to please look at the monitors for a special presentation by Brad Jenkins, Vice President of Utility Operations at PGE, followed by a presentation by our own Wendy Valise, Local Government Affairs Manager at Portland General Electric.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Jenkins. I am the Vice President of Operations here at Portland General Electric. What an honor to have the opportunity today to celebrate and recognize the contributions of Oregon's agricultural community. We greatly appreciate the Salem Chamber's efforts in support of the region's agricultural community. When asked to speak today, I knew I was going to fit right in. I grew up on a small farm in South Louisiana, and I was also a member of the Future Farmers of America back when I was in high school. Don't know if it's a category anymore, but I was a cattle judge. So I love this event. I love to see the participants, and I love to see our young folks really invested in the agricultural community and really investing in the Future Farmers of America. At PGE, we're proud to work with our agricultural customers to provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy to support local agricultural businesses. PGE is also dedicated to helping support the development of tomorrow's workforce, whether that be in agribusiness or whether that be performing maintenance on a wind turbine. Which is why I'm honored to introduce our recipient of the PGE Smart Grid Scholarship recipient, Josiah Cruikshank. Josiah is from Bend, Oregon, where he grew up in the suburbs. When Josh was 9 years old, his parents, who both grew up in livestock operations, were also Oregon FFA state officers. They moved the family to a small farm in Deschutes County. Josiah began his involvement in the FFA by raising pigs. Soon he found a love for competition, public speaking, and leadership within the organization. Josiah was elected Oregon FFA state president in 2019 and recently selected to be on Oregon's national FFA officer candidate at the National FFA Convention next week in Indianapolis. Now a student at Oregon State University, Josiah is passionate about Mountain Dew, Dallas Cowboys football, speaking German, and watching his three younger sisters find their place within the Future Farmers of America. So please help me and Wendy Belize welcome to the stage our 2021 PGE Smart Grid recipient, Josiah Cruikshank.
I was in elementary school when I learned about the danger of house fires. And I grew up in a second-story bedroom, and so that was a huge concern to me. They talked about how if the fire is in the stairway, you should jump out the window. So I went home and I looked out my window, and I realized there was no way I was going to survive a fall out of my bedroom window. So the only thing I knew what to do is I got my three little sisters, I got my mom to take us to Home Depot. And at Home Depot, I bought a really long string of paracord, and then I went home and I found a bunch of sticks. And I proceeded to make the most useful invention I'd ever created up until that point in my life, which was a rope ladder. But it's not a rope ladder that you're thinking of with like rope on the sides. It was just like paracord down the middle with like a stick tied at every foot. And I was really hoping that would come through for me if there was a fire. But I realized I needed to try it out. So my sister Jael tied it to the bed frame of my bed and threw it out the window. And she said, "You're good to go." And so I went out the window, stepped on the first run, looked back at her. I was like, this is not a good idea. But all three of my sisters were watching me. I'm their big brother, so I'm not going to back down from this rope ladder in that moment. So I go down to the second run. I put my hands on the rope. My feet are on the second step. Suddenly, all my weight's on the ladder, and instantly there was a snap. And I fell. I hit the ground. The gravel below my window just body slammed me. And I was laying there dazed, confused, looking up at the window. And my sister Jael looks over the edge of the window, looking at me laying there. And in an offensively calm tone of voice, she looks at the other sisters and says, "I think he's dead." And they just accepted that. It was fine with them. The reason I tell that story is as Oregon agriculturalists, even talking to Barb just a few minutes ago, I think we can all feel like we've been body slammed by the conditions around us lately. Whether that's the environment, the pandemic, the markets that we're trying to reach. It's been tough. The last year and a half, I think we can all admit that it has been tough. Sometimes it seems like the community around us thinks we're dead, and they don't even care about that. But I think that we can live our lives in a way that is that helps us persist through all of this. I think that we can all live the best life lived. And we might be wondering tonight, or today, what is the best life lived? When I think about the best life lived, I think back to an organization called the New Farmers of America. We've all heard of the Future Farmers of America that changed their name to the National FFA organization. The New Farmers of America, in the segregated world we lived in at the time, was an organization like the FFA for Black and Indigenous people, for people of color, to be in the South. and it eventually merged with the FFA organization. But they had their own creed. Some of us have heard of the FFA creed. There was also an NFA creed. And if you ever have a chance, I encourage you to go look at the NFA creed. It's a really rich document full of a lot of wisdom. The fourth paragraph of the NFA creed, though, says that I believe that the best life lived is the life of service. It says, I believe that happiness endures to mankind when it's gained by lifting the burdens of others. The life best lived is the life of service. I think that's something we can all take. Quickly, I want to talk about how the life of service carries through our eyes, to our heart, and then to our hands. When I think about service, I think about a student named Jeremy Minier. National FFA has a conference for students that they can go to where they learn about living to serve. It's called the Washington Leadership Conference. Jeremy Minier went to the Washington Leadership Conference a few years ago, and he realized that his hometown of Airedale, Iowa, only had 74 people in it, needed more servants in that town. So Jeremy made a living to serve plan, which is what all students do at this conference, and he went home and he started serving his community. His service project is super simple. He was cleaning out the gutters of people's homes. And for 2 years, he cleaned the gutters and nothing happened. And then on the second year, Jeremy made national news when he was elected the mayor of his small town. The youngest mayor in the United States of America, he was 18 years old. Jeremy saw with his eyes, he had the servant's eyes to see a need around him. How can we have servant's eyes? As agriculturalists in the state of Oregon, how do we spot needs around us? Now, when I think of service, I think of Jeremy. I also think about a service opportunity that I had growing up. It was called I Heart Bend. Now, I Heart Bend is an activity that a ton of community members in the Bend, Oregon area participate in. It's where we serve the community by picking up trash. We paint like fire hydrants. It's really fun. We all get matching t-shirts for the day. And at the end of the day, we go to the largest arena in the area and listen to a motivational speaker. But when I was growing up, I wasn't allowed to go to I Heart Bend. I couldn't figure out why. Instead, my family fulfilled my school's community service requirement by taking me to a place called Shepherd's House one night every month. And we'd go to Shepherd's House, and we would serve a meal to the homeless people there, get to talk with them, have meaningful conversations. And honestly, like when I was young, I was ticked about that. All my friends got matching t-shirts once a year. They wore them to school and were like, yeah, I did I Heart Bend. I had to wash smells out of my t-shirts once a month. All my friends, there's a professional photographer like we have here tonight. There's a professional photographer at I Heart Bend. They got photos taken and they'd post them all over their Instagrams. And people would be like, wow, that's so cool that you're serving the community. I wasn't allowed to take pictures. Even if I had been allowed to, I don't know what I would have taken a picture of. And I wasn't happy about that. I wasn't happy that I had to go to this homeless shelter every month and serve with my family. And I had a bad attitude about it. One night, my dad realized that. He pulled me outside for a few seconds, and he said, son, I don't want you to look like a servant on Instagram. He said, son, I want you to be a servant. And that moment stuck with me. At the time, I had no clue what he was talking about. But reflecting back, service can't be about us. It's easy to think that because we're volunteering our time or our resources that we are a servant. Service has to be about the impact we make on other people. That's how we have a servant's heart. Tonight, how can we have a servant's heart? Finally, I think about a servant's hands. What do you think of when you picture a servant's hands? I think of hands that are worn, maybe a little bit cracked, and coincidentally, they look a lot like my grandpa's hands. And my grandpa, his hands are really worn. He operates our family's Century Farm in Molalla. But before that, he was an ag teacher for 30 years. And if there was an ag teacher hall of fame, a high school ag teacher hall of fame, my grandpa wouldn't be in it. He was on the Oregon FFA board of directors briefly, but he didn't like the spotlight, so he retired from that. But for 30 years, he showed up every day in his students' lives, and he used his hands to make a difference in their lives. Like was said in my introduction, I moved outside of the suburbs to a small farm in Deschutes County. And when I initially moved out there, I had no clue what I was doing. My parents raised hogs, though, so they wanted me to raise a hog to get a taste of agriculture for myself. So they had a hog on the way, but I had no place to house it. So I was like looking at our backyard, like all the property behind us, like, well, I could assemble some like panels. And so I called my grandpa and I said, hey, you know what to do here? Like, could you help me assemble some panels or something? He's like, no problem, I'll come over in a few days. Well, the morning we were supposed to be assembling these panels, he shows up in his truck. He drove 3 hours to our house. And on his way, he had stopped by Home Depot and purchased on his own card a bunch of building materials. He had brought a bunch of tools with him. And I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but I'm not very good with a hammer. I'm good with my brain, not good with my hands. And so for the rest of that day, I tried to help my grandpa build this barn for me in the most awkward way possible. I had no clue what I was doing. But he built me this barn, and I raised all my hogs in it. Now my sisters are raising hogs in this barn. And at the end of the day, I was just blown away by this act of service that he had shown me. I said, Grandpa, what can I ever do to thank you for what you've done here today? And he said, it's no big deal. If you need anything else, just give me a call. And he got in his truck and he drove away. And I just stood there behind the truck as it drove away. And I was just dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. And I realized, looking back, that was no big deal to my grandpa. He built barns for people, whatever that looks like. As Teddy Roosevelt says, he did what he could with what he had where he was at. He used his hands. He used his hands to serve his grandkids, his students, his neighbors, the people around him. I hope that tonight or today we can celebrate the acts of service that have been done in the agriculture community in the Willamette Valley. It's really amazing. I hope that we can recognize how we use a servant's eyes to see opportunities, a servant's heart, a desire to serve others, and a servant's hands, where we give people acts of service, focus on the impact we can have on them. Thank you for having me here today. I'm so thankful to be a part of this community. It's a real honor. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josiah. I really appreciate those great words. Moving on, want to just note the great support of one of our incredible sponsors for today's, who and all of our sponsors believe deeply in the mission of our Salem Area Chamber of Commerce. Please join me at this time in watching our screens for SAIF President and CEO Chip Terhune on give some thoughtful comments about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, for the introduction. My name is Chip Terhune, and I've been president and CEO of SAIF since July 1st of this year. It's been an honor to join a company with such a proud history and strong legacy of service to Oregon. I come to SAIF with a fair amount of public and private experience. Some of you may know I served as Chief of Staff to Governor Ted Kulongoski before moving on to private industry for several years, including working at Schnitzer Steel Industries and Cambia Health Solutions, among others. In my first few months, I've been getting to know the company. Everywhere I turn, I'm encountering employees who are passionate about taking care of injured workers and providing exceptional service to Oregon's businesses. SAIF's been around since 1914, more than 100 years. And from the beginning, we have been dedicated to the agriculture industry. I am proud to share that most employers in agriculture, 90% of the voluntary market, choose SAIF to be their workers' compensation carrier. Because of that, we pay special attention to this industry and want to make sure you have everything you need for your workers' comp, whether it's helping managing your policy, understanding state and federal OSHA requirements, or keeping your workers safe and healthy. For the past 27 years, we have hosted agricultural safety seminars across the state, which we have moved online during this pandemic. We offer these seminars in English and Spanish to make them as accessible as possible to you and your workers. And we've sponsored the Ag Banquet for more than 20 years in partnership with the Salem Chamber of Commerce. And though the 2021 Ag Banquet had to be canceled, we are happy to be a part of the first ever Ag Harvest Celebration lunch. We are proud members of the Chamber and deeply value our longstanding partnership with that organization. The past 18 months have been exceptionally challenging for the ag industry. None of us could have predicted the compounding impacts of COVID, wildfires, heat waves, ice storms, and more. Yet this industry has remained incredibly resilient. To your credit, you have shown a remarkable ability to pivot in the face of challenges. Despite what has been thrown at you, you've kept the safety and health of your workers as top priority, and you've continued to deliver exceptional products to Oregon and across the world. As a native Oregonian, I am honored and humbled by this opportunity to address leaders from one of our state's oldest and most important industries. For generations, you have literally put food on our tables during the best of times and the worst. What I know about this industry is that you will continue to be resilient in the face of challenges, and you will continue to innovate to better serve your customers and the community. I want to thank you for this opportunity and wish you the best in the coming year. Our main partner in bringing you this annual event is KeyBank. Please join me in welcoming Ernesto Toscovich, Commercial Banking Senior Vice President at KeyBank. Ernesto?
Thank you and good day, ladies and gentlemen. I was thinking yesterday, what do I say today? And my 12-year-old nephew comes and he goes, "Uncle, why don't you just say, let's get this party started?" I do have a story though. I grew up in former Yugoslavia. In about 1980s, the country had an economic crisis, and there were shortages of cooking oil and coffee. I still remember when my mom heard that oil came to a store or coffee, she would send me to get some. And I was about maybe 11, 12, 13 years old. And I remember struggling among the frenzy of other 50 or 100 people, everybody trying to get into the store at the same time. And of course, I remember my inferiority because I was smaller than everybody else. Fast forward 2020, COVID pandemic hits, and we were, of course, told to stay home. And my first thought was, here we go again. There will be food shortages. And yet, food shortages did not happen. Somehow, our farmers, our dairymen, our food processors managed to stay home and still produce plenty of food and agricultural commodities. So I want to thank you, farmers, and everybody involved in agriculture for ensuring, in spite of tremendous challenges, for ensuring safety in our food and commodities supply. Thank you. We at KeyBank, too, by the way, it was Jack who paid for the event, it wasn't me. We at KeyBank, too, tried to help our utmost during the crisis. I don't think there was any business who came to us to ask for PPP help that was left behind, and I'm very proud of that. But I also want to thank our clients and anybody who entrusted us with this effort for their trust in us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the featured speaker, Barb Iverson. Barb is co-owner of Iverson Family Farms, Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm and Vineyard, FS Oil, Black Crow Grow, and Red Barn Hemp. She grew up on a 225-acre family near Woodburn. She graduated from Oregon State University with bachelor's in horticulture in 1982. During her college years, she worked at Rhododendron Nursery in Portland. Somebody spelled out rhododendron. They must have known that I'm going to be reading it. Nursery in Portland. It must be Tom. After graduation, Barb traveled to Australia, where she worked for 6 months at Yamina Rare Plants, a specialty nursery just out of Melbourne. Upon returning, she went to work for Van Veen Nursery in 1983, where she served as manager until 1994, where they closed the field growing portion of the nursery. Shortly thereafter, Barb was offered a position from her brothers to join the family farm Iverson Brothers Bulb Farm, which she changed to Barb Iverson and Brothers to prompt the Iverson family farm's name change. Barb started Wooden Shoe Bulb Company in 1983 with her sister and her sisters-in-law. Recently, she stepped down after long service as the Oregon Farm Bureau president, which was preceded by 3 vice presidencies. Barb currently serves on the board and executive committee of the Clackamas County Tourism and Development Council, and she's also a board chair of Monitor Telecom, an investor-owned internet and phone service cooperative. On note, she's a retired firefighter and EMT at Monitor Volunteer Fire Department, having served for 36 years. She remains a board member of the Oregon Agricultural Education Foundation under the Oregon Farm Bureau and is a devotee proponent of Oregon agriculture and local farm families. Please join me in welcoming today's keynote speaker, Barb Iverson. Thank you.
Wait. All right. Yeah. Thank you for having me here today. A year ago, when I was supposed to speak, and this was all canceled, I was the Oregon Farm Bureau president. I am not the Oregon Farm Bureau president anymore, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But Tammy, you asked me here, so I thought, well, since I'm not the president anymore, what should I talk about? So today we're going to talk about a step-by-step guide of in vitro fertilization of dairy cows. I thought you would enjoy that, Tammy. And for those that don't know, this photo is photoshopped. And do you know how you know that? It's because cows don't have top teeth. So if you don't learn anything else today, you know that cows don't have top teeth. It's a hard palate. So I'm not going to go through this because this is a lunch meeting, and it's probably not appropriate to do a step-by-step guide. So I'm going to go back to my standby. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my farm. So and some of the brands that we have on our farm. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about Farm Bureau, and then just my personal observations about agriculture in general. So my parents bought our family farm in 1950. They met in comparative anatomy at Multnomah College in Portland. So Multnomah College is now Portland State University, but who would have known you needed a comparative anatomy class to go to? But they must have been good at it, because they went on to have 6 kids, so I'm sure they passed the class. So they purchased the original 225 acres in 1950, proceeded to have 6 children, and we've grown over 110 different crops on the farm. I call it FAD, which is farmer ADD, where you go around in circles in the field in the tractor and you get a little bored. You think there's got to be something better, so you're always looking at different crops to grow. But as you can see, we've got tulips, tall fescue grass, an assortment of crops. But our claim to fame is probably this. This picture here, we were on the cover of the State Fair program in 1986. They came out and took our picture. We were Farm Family of the Year. So if you went to the State Fair in 1986, you would have gotten my picture. And if you've got it today, I'll autograph it. But there's a few of you that are old enough to maybe have gone. It was a couple years ago. Anyway, what stands out to me on this is Reba McEntire. I remember she was there signing autographs, and that was a heck of a long time ago. I don't think she's aged at all. But the stars that are there, I thought that was fairly entertaining. This is
if you don't remember me on the cover of the State Fair program, that's okay. This is probably what we're known for. We have Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm. We used to be a Wooden Shoe Bulb Company, but when people would call us, they would say, "Is this the Tulip Farm?" And after about the 1,000th time of that, I just said, we're going to change our damn name. It's going to go to Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm, and I don't have to answer that question anymore. So we did. But we started Wooden Shoe in 1983. We'd started growing tulips in about 1975. We grew them for a guy from Terre Haute, Indiana. And our climate in the Willamette Valley is just ideal. So we'd grow them here, and he'd haul them back to Terre Haute to force for Christmas. We're about 2 weeks ahead of Holland. So for those of you that don't know, if you cut a tulip in half in August, that flower is already formed for next year. So a tulip needs seasons. So this summer, once that tulip is formed, then you can give it winter, and then you put it in the greenhouse, and voila, you got a flower. So we could force them here, force the bulbs from here for Christmas. Well, when he retired, my brothers bought the bulb stock and went into the dry bulb sales. And it was a pretty tough business. So they grew tulips for a couple years. And then my sister, myself, I had 3 sister-in-laws, and my younger brother at the time, we let him join only with the understanding that once he got married, whoever he married became a partner. The guys could go farm, but we wanted to run the retail tulip business. So it's not probably the best way to choose your business partners, but it does work. She's still with us. One of the things, so when we started growing tulips, we really catered to the gardeners. So that was how we started. We'd have all the different varieties planted, we'd take orders, ship their bulbs, we'd do cut flowers. And then in the early 2000s, we saw a shift. People would come, they'd take their pictures, and they'd leave. And I remember, I don't know, it was probably about 2002, and the season was over, and I was kind of looking how we did, and it was like, well, this is a lot of fun, but if we don't make any money, let's just pull the plug. We've got to do something different. And so what we did is we started charging, because we realized we weren't just in the flower business, but we were in the business of making memories. People came out there, they'd take their family pictures, enjoy their time there. But when we started charging, something interesting happened. Our attendance increased. We had more people there wanting to hand us their money as they rolled in the door and go out and wander through the field. So for us, that was kind of a game changer. We had to change how we were doing business because we realized we weren't going to make it just selling bulbs and cut flowers. We need to sell that experience. And there's a lot to that. When I get old, I want somebody to just sit me next to the field in a chair and leave me alone. Just leave me alone. And so after this change, we see a broad group of, well, we see people from all over. Let me just say that. So it takes us, this is pre-COVID, but we used to put maps up, and it takes us about 5 days to get all 50 states. And by the end of the season, we have about 140 different countries pinned. It's just amazing. The demographics, there's universal appeal. It's just beautiful out there. And you really never know what you're going to see. If you can think it, we've probably seen it out there. So that kind of says it all. This one prompted some little ones. These are my grandkids and my son. And we also like to work with other partners. So this is TMK Creamery. For those that you don't know, they have a little creamery over out of Canby. They have ice cream. They make vodka out of milk. It's actually okay. It's just, yeah. It's okay. It's great. I'm sure it's great. Anyway, we try to give back to the community as we go around. We work with a lot of nonprofits. I would say about 7 years ago, we quit going through a broker to sell flowers. We'll work with March of Dimes, Easter Seals, any nonprofit that wants to go, because we can control our price. What we found when we were going to the big box stores with all our flowers is that price never increased. And we used to do 2 million stems in our greenhouse. We'd force flowers in the greenhouse to go to the big box stores. And we tried to raise our price a penny to Trader Joe's, and they canceled the contract. And we just said, you know, this risk is too much. We just can't do it anymore. So we don't do greenhouse tulips anymore. We actually do much better selling to the people that come out. Create that experience. And you never know what you're going to see out there. This group of ladies showed up a couple of years ago. This is pre-COVID, of course. And I see them out there, and it's like, oh, I got to get a picture. I got to get a picture. So I grab my camera and run out there. Where are you from? Los Angeles. So they're actually Vietnamese. It's Hmong. And I've seen them out there since. But they come out and just take pictures. There's a universal appeal with flowers. And you just never know. I left the naked pictures out, so I hope that's all right. So success is getting what you want, but happiness is wanting what you get. One of the issues we've had, and you'll hear it time and again, there's too many cars out there. There's too many people. There's, you know, whether it's a pumpkin patch or whether it's a tulip festival, it's an issue. But we wouldn't survive without this. So that's where we are. I lost my train of thought, so I'm sorry. So anyway, too many people, you have to sit in traffic for a couple hours. Well, I wish for those days, but then 2020 hit. The thing is, nobody told the tulips that it was 2020 and nobody was coming out, so they didn't need to bloom. So we were in a situation, we were 3 days from opening, and we got shut down. 3 days. Even the porta potties were there. We had the porta potties, I had them all lined up, and no, that was it. We shut the door. The tulips still bloomed. We still had to take care of them. We still had to do all the work. We had all these potted tulips to sell to the people, but no people. So what we did in 2020, we came up with I was going to say it, the senior pot program, but it doesn't sound quite right. Senior tulip program, where people could order tulips from us, and then we would take them to senior homes. And we wouldn't deliver to one person, was the thing. They could like order for grandpa or mom or something like that. We wanted it to go to every resident there because we wanted everybody to feel loved and special. And so people could order anonymously, and we'd turn around and we'd call up these senior homes, and we'd say, how many residents do you have? And they'd say, 60. And so we'd load up 60 pots, and we'd take them off to the nursing home. And it really worked well. It worked so well, we sold out of pots. And we were able to pick some flowers in the field. So that was, it salvaged something. At least we didn't throw all those away. But it was, to say it was a tough season would be kind of an understatement. But doesn't work. Our biggest COVID change, really, that we'll go forward with is in 2021, we rolled into all online ticketing. So before, when you came out on a weekend, you were going to sit in traffic, our neighbors weren't happy with us, all sorts of issues. By going completely to online ticketing, we eliminated our lines. So we were able, if you come on a weekend and you have a 1 o'clock time slot, you're not going to sit 2 hours in traffic before you get there. And that's one thing we'll carry forward. We'd started selling tickets online in 2015, but we could never make that jump to 100%. People were used to, and it's really hard to turn down, but they would hand us money at the gate. That's really hard to say we're going to online ticketing when they still want to hand you money to let them in. But it's a much better experience for our neighbor, for the people that visit. So that's one of those things going forward we'll stick with. We also have a vineyard out there. So with COVID, everybody heard that either you become a great cook or an alcoholic. We sold a lot of wine, but our wine room closed down, so that was tough. 2020 was also the year of the smoke. So they talk about the locusts coming. Well, for us, it was the starlings. So under the cover of smoke, because our grapes were about ready, the starlings moved in. We didn't want the employees. We were in a mandatory evacuation zone. We stayed, but we didn't have the employees come in. The starlings moved in. So the starlings wiped out our grapes in 2020, which was probably in hindsight a good thing because there would have been the smoke taint. At least we didn't feel like we should try and salvage them. They were gone. So 2020 was kind of a tough year. We also, was mentioned earlier, I grew rhododendrons for years for Van Veen Nursery. And when we quit growing rhodies in the early 90s, we had a rhododendron stock block. It's about a 4-acre parcel on the farm. It's a really odd place. We can't really farm it. But we turned it into an event garden years ago. All the weddings and events were canceled in 2020. So again, we sell a lot of our wine to those groups. It was a tough year. And then we get into this. This is industrial hemp, for those that were wondering there for a minute. And in 2017, my dad had liver cancer in March. He'd had ocular melanoma the previous spring, and it was an aggressive cancer, and it traveled to his liver. And in March, he was sent home from the hospital with a bag full of pills. And the instructions were just make him comfortable, just a matter of time. Well, Dad, he's World War II vet, 90 years old, probably in the tractor the week before, but he was flat out in bed. You couldn't have a conversation with him. It was just a horrible experience. World War II vet, he'd gone through a PTO. He had more lives than a cat. And here he is laying in bed, unable to communicate with us. And it was just like, this isn't the way we're going to go through. So we called my cousin, who happened to be on the dark side. He was in the marijuana business, but he was in the extraction business. And we said, look, we've heard there's something out there, but we don't know what it is. And he says, yeah, it's called CBD. He said, and we were like, well, can we try some with him? We don't want Dad high, but can we try some? He said, sure. So he brought some capsules down. So we pulled Dad off of all the medications he was on. He had a whole bunch. And we started him on CBD. Well, I walked in the house the next morning, and he was sitting at the table eating breakfast. Unbelievable experience. It just was not what I expected. His goal that year was to live through the Tulip Fest, and he did. He had 42 days. 42 days, whether it lengthened his life, we don't know, but the quality of life. We had quality of life with Dad. We were able to say goodbye. And it was a crazy experience. So we had somebody approach us if we wanted to grow industrial hemp. And we were like, if we can share this gift with other people to go through that same experience that we just went through, absolutely. So we jumped in. We grew 18 acres that first year, and we hand planted them, and we planted corn around the perimeter because we didn't want the neighbors to know what we were doing. There's kind of a stigma at the time. Crazy Iversons, now what are they up to? Our neighbors still weren't very happy. But that was kind of at the beginning of all the industrial hemp part. And the plant itself is a gorgeous plant. We planted by hand that first year, our spacing was 5 feet by 6 feet. We've since bought a planter. Now this is a Ferrari brand. And it probably costs about the same as a Ferrari. I think, Pete, I don't know, what's a Ferrari cost? You probably have a couple in your barn. But it works great. It's a beautiful plant. In the first year we grew it, we seeded it by hand. We did all that. We grew it like a marijuana crop. I think our advisor was kind of this guy that had that background, so we used the little pucks, and we put them in the pucks, and we had to use pH-neutral water. He would come out at midnight to water, because I think it was by the light of the moon they do better. I have no idea. But we would sneak over there, and his plants would be dying, these plants would be dying, and he caught us once using because he always wanted us to moderate the pH, to make it pH neutral. And these plants were drying up and dying, and the one day we snuck over and we were watering them, and he caught us. We got big trouble because it wasn't pH neutral water. Well, the plants were dying, so either water the plant, just water them. Anyway, yeah, that was quite a different experience growing them. But that first field, that 18 acres, it just looked like, we planted over the 4th of July weekend, and by the 1st of September, it looked like a Christmas tree field out there. The trunks, I'm saying, were probably 6 inches in diameter. They're as high as me. It's gorgeous. You can see why the fiber market, all those kinds of things, there's a lot of opportunity with that plant. And you know, the first couple of years we harvested by chopping them off and then run it through a chipper. Because when we started, we grew for this guy that, oh, I've got a market, you just have to grow it. Well, then it became you have to grow it and you have to dry it. Well, drying is kind of a big deal. But there was a hop grower near us that I was able to talk into drying, letting us dry the plants at his place. And I have to say the biggest relief was when we turned the dryer on the first time and it didn't smell like marijuana. That was the biggest fear, was the whole community would smell like marijuana, and it didn't. The hemp smells a little bit different. So I'm told. No. I'll get there. Anyway, the first couple years we used loppers, and then we ran it through a chipper, ran it into a truck. We used some old potato equipment, ran it into the hop house, worked great. Then we had about 100 acres, and this was about the 3rd year we were into it. And our crew came to us and they said, well, we see all these plants out there, but how are you going to harvest them? I said, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll just, cut them and chip them. And they said, no, you're not. We're quitting if you do that. They did not want to do this. It's hard work. And so we went and got a couple forage harvesters, and this works great. We went from about 10 people in the field harvesting to the drivers. So it works real good. Although the first year we ran it through the chipper, when we grew this plant, the connoisseurs all came out and freaked out because we were messing up the terpenes and all this other stuff. And it's an oil crop, is what we're growing it for. We're growing it for the CBD oil. So this industry itself was, it was a new industry a couple years ago, and it really had a lot of speculators in it, I guess. I don't know if that's the way you say it, but we called it the cannabis industry, because there was, everybody had a promise and a dream, and hardly any of it came to fruition. What was our saving grace is we ran across Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web, they're the ones that, with the Dravet syndrome, the seizure activity for the kids. And they developed that, and so we grew for Charlotte's Web. And that's really what salvaged our farm. But the whole industry, I'll show you in a second, is just languishing. So we also started our own brand, Red Barn Hemp. So we sell products online, or not on, we do online, but also out there at the farm. But I'm just going to show you a few numbers on how this industry's gone. We started growing in 1917, and there were 246 growers. In 2019, there were 63,000 acres. Unbelievable. It was crazy. And the thing is, we grew for the 3rd largest manufacturer. So we did the math and figured about 40,000 acres would fill the entire market. And there were 63,000 in Oregon alone. So it was set to collapse. If you want to ruin a market, just tell a bunch of farmers in a room that it's going to be great, and they'll all go grow it and ruin the market. So we're really good at that. But you can kind of see where it's gone. And we were promised, there was the promise from the FDA to make some rules and regulations about 3 years ago. And things just aren't moving. It's just, so Epidiolex was certified as a drug for seizures, for kids' seizures. Epidiolex is CBD, but it's an isolate. So it's a different material than what we grow with the full spectrum oil. Anyway, if I'm rambling, I apologize, but if you have questions, come talk to me afterwards. It's rough. So in 2017, we threw the dice for hemp, but we also threw the dice for this. We started a Tier 2 marijuana grow. And again, we put a fence around it, obviously, but we hid it on the farm. Not hidden, there's cameras everywhere. We have a hemp separation plan. There's a lot of rules and regulations. Still are. Our issue is the illegal grows that are around the neighborhood now. I mean, there were probably 5 within a 4-mile radius of my place. And you call the county commissioners, you call the ODA, nothing happened. And it's classic. There was an article in the paper 2 weeks ago about these illegal grows, because I think Josephine County declared a state of emergency. And the response on how they're going to pay for the people to go after these grows is to increase my license, the fees on my license, so that they can pay for those. And it's like, well, maybe they're growing because it's so expensive to grow with all the cameras and all the fees and all the LUCs, the land use compatibility statement, everything that I have to go through and jump through to do illegally. You're going to make it harder for me and not go bust these guys? I think it's time they step up and take some of these out. I mean, it's really frustrating as somebody that tries to follow the rules and then just see that happen. And they were all over the place. Josephine County, they declared a state of emergency to get some help. It's gotten out of hand. I'm going to stop there on that one. I'm going to move into Farm Bureau because they'll pull me off here pretty soon. So Farm Bureau, I'm going to cover this real quick. So why was I involved in Farm Bureau? Because I love to farm. So that was digging tulips like a couple years ago. But what is Farm Bureau? Farm Bureau really is a lot of networking. But grassroots public policy. So we have a policy book. So once a year, so each county has a county board. So it's made up of president, vice president, secretary, all of that. And they get together usually once a month and talk about what's going on in the county. Then if they see a problem, they can develop a policy. Like I could develop a policy of marijuana grows. They need to raise the liquor tax, or they need to do something else to raise money to go after those guys. And I would bring it to the State Farm Bureau, which in December we meet, all the counties meet, we have an annual meeting. And we sit down in the House of Delegates and we go through this policy book. And any new proposals or any new policies that somebody wants to introduce. And everybody in the state, these farmers in the state, the representatives from every county get together and we sit around, we debate these. We don't always agree. You know, it's, in a lot of ways, I liken Farm Bureau to a family. You know, some of them you can talk to, some of them you'll have dinner with, some of them, never mind. They're like a family sometimes. Anyway, but there's a lot of other things with Farm Bureau, but it is like a family. And it's like when you go to annual convention, it's like you sit down and you talk to these people, it's like you just saw them yesterday. It might be a year, and you have a common language. What's going on, all the things that are going, you know, the problems that you're having. But it's but it's really the grassroots lobbying is what Farm Bureau is all about. Now, my own journey was through the county board. I got involved in committees. I was chair of, there's an awards and recognition committee, so I'd MC an award. And I remember I was leaving because House of Delegates wasn't my thing. I remember I was leaving after the awards ceremony, and somebody said, "Hey, I'm going to throw your name in as a third vice president." And I laughed at her. I said, "Go ahead, I'm not going to be there, so they won't elect me." And I'll remember, you know where you are, like when the Challenger exploded or the towers went down, things like that? You have those, like, moments. Well, I remember the president of Oregon Farm Bureau calling me and saying, "Did you throw your name in the hat?" "Yeah, why?" "Well, you just got elected third vice president." I still remember that moment. That I'll just stop there again. That old OS moment. Anyway, after county, I got elected. I'm involved in Oregon Ag Education Foundation, which is where it's more of an education area where we have Summer Ag Institute, things like that. I moved up through the ranks, second, first vice president, and then president in December of 19. So, 2020, the year of the Zoom. So, I get bored. This is Pete Postaway, by the way. No, so Zoom calls are great. You know, we're a statewide organization. It has its place. sometimes, but it's tough to run, state meetings. You guys all know, you've sat through these Zoom meetings. Sometimes they're not entirely entertaining. So my family says this one is probably the most apropos for me. Anyway, there's a fish. If you ever get into this, there's a fish that's really great. Then 2021 hit. Another year, another day. So the ice storm hit. So we lost power, like everybody else did. And we're on the end of a leg on a small little road, so we were a couple weeks out. So I was home cleaning up branches, keeping the generator going. Nobody else was home, but my neighbors were home. I'd wave at them when I drove by with the gator. And a month later, I woke up at this place. I was out picking up branches, and this voice said, "You have to go to Mallory's now." Well, Mallory was my neighbor, and they were outside. And I don't remember who the voice was, but it told me I needed to get my butt over there. Apparently, I made it about halfway, because I don't remember any, halfway. They brought me to Salem. They life-flighted me to OHSU. That move there probably saved my life. 2 weeks later, they sent me home, but they hadn't found the aneurysm. I don't remember coming home for those 4 days. 4 days later, I ended up at OHSU again. This time they went in again. They were finally able to find the aneurysm and coil it. I remember walking down the hall at OHSU and waking up. Now, I had been going, which was really scary for me because I don't know what I said or what I did. My family was still around, so I assume it wasn't too bad. But I don't remember any of it. And it was really tough because by then the Tulip Festival was going, and it was just a different experience. And they said, "Oh, you almost died 3 times." And I'm like, "No, I didn't," because I didn't see my mom, I didn't see my dad. I thought, "Oh, that couldn't be." But it was you realize how precious life is, or how it can just go like that. Because 1 minute you're cleaning up branches and the next minute you're not. It was odd. I just put this in here for my dear little kids, my dear young kids. When I turned 60, they said, "Mom, the best thing about turning 60 is you don't have to worry about dying young anymore." So I write them out of the will. So I came home from OHSU to this and told to stay home. This was our 38th annual festival, and I was told to stay home and get better. That was almost as hard as waking up and realizing I'd lost a month of my life. Just stay home. Well, why are you doing that? You just don't understand. Yeah, okay. I decided the safest place for me was in my driveway, watching the Tulip Festival go by. But they did a great job. We had a great Tulip Festival. We're moving forward. We're going to have one next year. Whether I'm here or not, I don't know. So I'm going to transition. One of the things that we hear a lot is, how do we help our local farmers? Well, I'm going to preface it, say, how do I help all farmers? Because it doesn't matter if you're here, if you're in Kentucky, if you're in Paraguay, we're all struggling. We're all going through the same thing: high prices, small margins, things like that. So I'm going to just do a little math here with you. So the Oregon Department of Ag, they just came out with their numbers. So there's 37,200 farms in Oregon. Average size is 425 acres. Of those, 44% of all farmers are women in Oregon, and almost 97% of farms are family-owned. I'm going to change to economic scale. So you can see the vast majority are smaller farms. 980 of the farms made $1 million or more. $1 million, 2.6. We'll go over equipment later. Make sure I'm on the right page. Now, I'm going to apply this math to across the United States. So there's about 2 million farms in the United States. If you take that number, 2.6%, that means about 52,000 farms in the United States make over $1 million, $1 million. Autzen Stadium holds 54,000. The coach at Oregon makes $5.5 million a year. I just call that a thin green line, because if you think about the farmers that are producing the vast majority, it's not very many people. And my front line is expensive. So this is used equipment. So you're spending close to $500,000 for a big tractor, the implement to go behind it, a combine. This is $359, but that doesn't include the headers. So whether it's grass seed header or reel header, I mean, it's expensive to farm. This is just food for thought. So some of my trends and what I'm seeing. In 2017, we grossed more on our tulip festival than we did farming 1,200 acres. Our tulip field is 40 acres. Just let that sink in a minute. So some of the trends we're seeing. Outside investors, REITs, real estate investment trusts. Who's the largest? Anybody know who the largest farmland owner in the United States is? Bill Gates, you got it. Why? I mean, really, it comes down why. Why is he the largest landowner? Why is he out buying farm ground? You know, other than to compete against me. Farms are getting bigger due to economics and other factors. Now, we're guilty of that. In the past 50 years, we've gobbled up 8 of our neighbors. So when I grew up, we had the 225 acres. Now we've got 8 of our neighbors surrounding us. But there's also 4 of us came back to the farm, bigger. And we don't want a road farm. You know, we farmed Minnow Brown Island for years and over here by the prison. Now that's all industrial now. And Minnow Brown, so NORPAC is something else now. It went bankrupt. Agri-Pac went out about 20 years ago. And Truett Brothers, they've changed their mix. Consolidated markets, both buyers and sellers. You know, 4 grocery store chains own like 80% of the grocery market. The cost of equipment. You know, a tractor, combine, you're looking at $500,000. And that's just to buy it, and that's off your margin. I mean, where do you find the money to buy that? Loss of markets, international. You know, trade is huge for Oregon. Oregon is an export state, and we need good trade, especially with the Pacific Rim countries. Increased regulations and fees. So I'm going to talk a little bit about increased regulations, because there's something called the Food Safety Modernization Act. I think we're the only state in the country that doesn't, their own ag department doesn't inspect those farmers. We have the FDA do it. And it's just, they don't even, well, it's tough. Let me just put it that way. Labor is another one. You know, temporary labor. We're having a hard time finding. So we've got small margins. I'll speed it up here. Aging farmers. So the average age of a farmer in Oregon is 59. I would say that, but the other concern we have is the aging, our aging employers, or our employees. You know, we see the employees getting older as well. There's the H-2A program, but Oregon doesn't use it well, and labor contractors. So we're seeing more and more labor contractors used. Suicides. So I remember in the early 2000s when we were struggling on the farm, we were having a tough time, and thinking that I hope we can hang on until my folks pass away. Because Their home is on the farm. If we lose it, we lose everything, and they lose their home. And there's a lot of guilt associated with that. And no transition. We're seeing this more and more as kids are just going, oh, why do I want to go back to that? I've heard Dad and Mom complain for years about it, and it's not in my blood. I see long hours, and why do I want to do that? So in the next 20 years, we'll see 64% of the ag land pass to new owners. I failed to put on this list water. So you've heard whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And there's a lot of truth to that, because water, without it, you don't have a crop. So what's going on over in Jefferson County, over out of Madras, and down at Klamath Falls, there's farmers losing their farms. And there's no silver lining right now on how it's going to get better. I mean, these are family farms, obviously. So we get, how can I help farmers? I'll wind up here. First thing is understand that farmer is not a job title. It's more than that. It's a way of life. It's a heritage. It's a calling. You know, we work by the acre, not by the hour. And I don't know. We think different, right, Pete? Well, I think different. I know you do, but we won't go there, maybe. I'll keep going. Understand that we're 1% of the population. We don't have a lot of clout, you know, and we don't have deep pockets. Our equity is tied up in our farm ground and our equipment. It's not like I've got a boatload of cash in the bank. So how can you help me? Trust us. You know, talk to us. Visit our farms. You know, our biggest frustration is over things we can't control. And part of that I would call professional integrity. So when we go testify in front of legislators, and they hold up a piece of paper and said, well, you don't need that chemical because there's 100 alternatives. And we research and find out that's a lie. Or, oh, hold up, this is the Capitol Press from the other day. Non-existent manure study sways Washington court. You know, our legislators don't always listen to us. And, you know, I don't mind. I'll fight the elements. I'll deal with my water problems. But when there's a lack of professional integrity in the room, that is the hardest part of this job, or farming. When people out and out lie about us, don't talk to us, lie to legislators, lie to courts, and nothing happens. That is my biggest frustration. So come talk to me if you got something. So, you know, I'm wrapping up here. We don't remember days, we remember moments. This was the moment that I didn't think my kids were going to grow to adulthood. Never forget that. They made it. But after this year, I just, you know, enjoy the little things, because someday you don't know when there'll be the big things. And, you know, from someone who's just grateful to be up here in front, standing and speaking to you, you know, I just want to say thank you. And I want to especially thank the farmers in the room and the support, the people that support our industry. You know, we couldn't do this without you, but just trust us. You know, we're here, we're not trying to hide anything. And with that, I'd like to invite you to the Tulip Fest next spring. My unabashed advertising here. It should be a great festival. So thank you very much. Well, I'll get out of your way.
I was going to say that one photograph looked like me about way too long ago, Barb. So thank you so much for all of your thoughtful comments. And really, you are an example of innovation, creativity, and resilience, really the epitome of Oregon agriculture. So thank you so much. And please help me thank Barb once again, please. And I don't know if John Zelensky is here or not, but I would be remiss without saying, make sure you slow down when you're driving out in farm country for all of our tractors and hardworking folks. At this time, I want to invite our CEO, Tom Hoffert, up to just wrap up the program today. Tom?
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you, buddy. Well, thank you for holding on a couple extra minutes. It's great to have you all here. And a pretty special program. And I'd like to give a little credit to this program to actually the Salem Convention Center. We met with Steve Johnson, and he said, Tom, we've got to bring people back together in person. And so this event is that, played out. A little different format, but we're very excited to invite all of you back, and mark your calendars now. We will have our 2022 SAIF Agri-Business Banquet returning to the evening format, presented by Key Bank on Friday evening, January 21st. So please mark your calendars and be watchful of those invites coming out. Our keynote presenter that night will be fascinating. Carrie Timchuk with the Oregon Historical Society will provide an overview and a history of Oregon agriculture. If you've ever seen Carrie speak, this is sure to be a very unique and insightful look into Oregon's agricultural history. Bruce, thank you so much for coming back as our past president and being our MC today. We'd like to go through a few thank yous. First of all, of course, to SAIF and to Key Bank. Your companies have stood behind this banquet from the beginning, and that is not forgotten by our farmers, producers, vintners, processors, and those industries that support agriculture. I'm going to invite you to take this program home, because within it is incredible sponsors who made this banquet possible. Look through and make choices to work with companies that support efforts like this. A hearty thank you goes to Lynn Zielinski Mills, who is not here today, but Lynn is with SAIF, and Lynn leads our Ag Committee. And Lynn, know that this group thanks you virtually and looks forward to when SAIF can be back in person as a company. I'd also like to thank Naomi Tillery on our chamber staff, who led putting together this special luncheon along with the Ag Committee. And Naomi does a great job to bring a super effort here. Stacy, thank you for gifting us with your voice. And Sheldon, thank you for gifting us with your heart and your knowledge. We have our ambassadors group who always welcome you. Thank you, ambassadors, for making this environment special. And of course, all these efforts occur with our whole chamber staff working, and I would say our chamber staff team is absolutely best in class. Thank you all for your support. To Josiah, you got a little extra scholarship money going to Oregon State. We're proud that you're able to do that, and thank you for sharing your presentation today. We know you're going to have some excitement in Indianapolis coming up. Congratulations on that trip. And of course, Barb, thank you so much for our keynote today and talking a little bit about new Oregon agriculture. Tammy, you inspire us all. This group is always has a smile on their face when you're around. Remember, always make people around you feel better. And I'd like to thank Allied Video, Capital Community Media, and the Salem Convention Center for allowing us to have this event and safely allowing us to have this event with social distancing and masks and the like. Thank you to Emmanuel Goicoechea, who is running in a volunteer role our camera today, and to Brian Hart and the team at Allied Video for managing our sound and everything else. This rebroadcast will be seen on the Salem Chamber's YouTube channel, as well as on Capital Community Media and their channels. Now, in front of you is a special centerpiece. We wish to send you home with that. Remember, I asked you to bring this home, but would you turn it around and see if somebody at your table has a star on back? If you do, you are taking home the centerpiece. Thank you, Phil, and the great group at Chemeketa Community College for making that happen. Now, at our table, nobody has the star because I have it right here. Would we all be Would we all be in agreement that Stacy Foster should take this home for the anthem? That's right. And we have up for grabs on the stage, apparently, so come grab one of those as well. Now, we've got a great partner that wants to keep your bellies filled. So on your way out, our friends at Willamette Valley Pie Company will be handing every single attendee a wonderful pie. Choose either apple or Marionberry, your choice, but thank you so much for Willamette Valley Pie Company for making that happen. Folks, we will see you all on January 21st, 2022. Choose to buy locally. God bless you all. Have a great afternoon.